Welcome back to another live and amplified special edition of the Hoedown Showdown here at CRS in Nashville, Tennessee. We have Paulina Jayne joining us. How's it going today?
Oh, it's so wonderful. I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to have you here. It's I mentioned to you off mic here. I don't know what y'all are doing in Michigan, but you're like the third or fourth person from Michigan that's come through.
I do think that there's something in the water. That's what I said to you earlier. And there's plenty of water to choose from, right? We got all the lakes in the world.
Yep. And it's funny because it's all country musicians. And it's like, well, I guess Detroit Rock City isn't really 100% true anymore. So,
you know, I do think that for most of the artists that I've met from that state, myself included, there's something about the Detroit grit that we can't seem to get out of our country music, even if that's what we write.
Fair.
But it's funny what similarities we have between even just Tennessee and Michigan in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, did you grow up in Detroit proper, or were you in like a suburb?
I was in a suburb right outside of Detroit, but I spent a lot of time. I spent my summers a lot of times over on the west side of the state. My grandpa had a pretty cool farm over there, so we'd go and do some art classes and different stuff. And so I got to see both the city and the countryside. It was a pretty good balance.
For sure. That's the cool thing about Michigan is you can get both in a relatively short drive. So
That's right.
That's really cool. So what was it like growing up in and around Detroit?
Wow. Well, first of all, culturally speaking, it was so rich. Like there's all different kinds of people in the city, from, all kinds of places too. So when you have influences like that, you get to have music that is really, really rich, and it's really it's just widespread. So I think that really had an impact on my songs. And I grew up around, Motown music, where that was created. I grew up around a place where Kid Rock was born, and Eminem, and it's insane. But at the same time, you hear so many fantastic country songs coming out of that town.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's I was actually listening to the Kid Rock podcast on for the interview he did with JRE or Joe Rogan not too long ago. And I was like, Detroit. It's like one of those. I don't want to say untapped resources, but it's like something. It feels like people have forgotten about Detroit, and it's like, no, Detroit's still there. I've been to Detroit several different times, and every time I go, I'm in a different part of the city, and it's always a good time. So
we had our battles for a while, and honestly, rightfully so, considering what that city went through. But there's a man named Dan Gilbert who's come into Detroit, and he took a chance on the city quite a few years ago now, and just started building out a lot of places that had been missing infrastructure for a while, and I have hope for it. Hope for it.
For sure. That's really cool. So looking at your music, was music kind of always there for you? Well, I mean, obviously growing up in Detroit, you've got pull influences, but was your family musical, or were they just kind of the main influencers of the type of music you listen to?
So it's funny you ask, because my dad, he can't sing a lick.
Fair.
My dad cannot sing one lick, but he can remember lyrics like crazy. Like he could name any Beatles song or any Stevie Wonder song or Average White Band, anything you can imagine, he could drop a lyric like that. My mom, on the other hand, though, she was a pianist, and so are both my grandmas. And so when I was 5 years old, I was sent to take piano lessons immediately, and I kind of dreaded them every week until I was about 9, and I started writing my own pieces. But music was a part of my upbringing. I mean, I remember listening to Frank Sinatra and dancing around the family room, and gosh, it was just rich, really rich times.
For sure. And I'm sure you'd mentioned that you grew up on, or you had a lot of Motown. Obviously growing up in Detroit. So I feel like piano would be the obvious choice, like the go-to, but I feel like any child, like the piano is kind of the starting point for a musical journey. So
it's cool because it's one of the only instruments, aside from maybe drums, where you can look at everything that you're about to play. You can see it right before you. So if you're a visual learner, it helps.
I often tell people, if I were to go back, and because when I was a kid, I tried to get into music. I tried to learn how to play an instrument, except I played the cornet, which is an offspring of the trumpet family.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
And I stuck with it for about 6 months. I just couldn't get it. And it didn't make sense to me. And they're like, well, you got to do this. And there's a lot of variables in it. And I'm like, I want something, if I hit this, I know it's going to make this note.
Sure, I love that.
So it's like you got like half things and all this. And I'm like,
that was always wild to me when I'd see these people playing these instruments. I'm like, how in the world you got to do that all by ear, you know?
Yeah. And so I gave that up, and then as I started growing into the live and amplified thing and, really starting to appreciate like musicianship and stuff like that, I was like, man, if I were to go back, it'd probably be piano because it's all right there.
Yep.
You know exactly what you got to hit. There's no like, oh, yeah, half hit here.
Exactly right.
It's like these three, so it's
Yep.
It's a little bit more practical in my eyes. So.
I completely agree with you. I brought a little sheet of paper home when I was in middle school to my mom, and I said, Mom, I want to learn the trombone,
It's like, oh, great.
My mom told me no. She said, no, you can't do that, but you can play guitar.
Fair. In some cases, the guitar is probably a little bit more loud and obnoxious.
That's true.
In that case.
That's true.
Because I remember I was like, I want to do drums. And like, no, you're not doing drums.
Yeah,
We're not going to let that slide. It's
no,
like, okay.
Electric drums at most, right?
Yeah, right. So are you still based out of Detroit, or are you here in Nashville?
I'm not. I've been in Nashville for a little while. This has been home for me, and I just love it. I've lived in probably every pocket of Nashville, too.
Fair. How do obviously, if you've been here for a while, you enjoy Nashville and whatnot. Was it a hard transition for you moving from Detroit?
Well, one of the beautiful parts about having come down here is that I spent some time here in Nashville in high school. Okay. I was down here every 2 weeks. And so because of that, I developed a few relationships, and my producer was here, and my co-writers were here. And, having come down at the time, and you'll appreciate this, my first co-write was with JT Harding and Shane McAnally.
Nice.
So I'm sitting in a room with these guys, and they're connecting me with all these different people, and not to mention the fact that I went to school here. I went to Belmont University, and so I had an infrastructure around me that made the transition easier, but there's nothing like leaving home.
For sure.
There's nothing like it.
I feel like the university is like the starter pack for people that want to move here. Like
Absolutely.
I've had friends that moved over from the UK.
Yep.
Just to go to school here, and it's like, okay, there's your introduction.
I hear you entirely. No, the school part was a blessing for sure. I'm paying for it now, though.
Right. It's like, I should have just stayed with the community college, and I would have been fine. I didn't need to go to a big fancy school.
Right, exactly.
Because I grew up in South Chicago, and we had a satellite campus at Purdue right down the street from us.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could have went there for a tenth of what I went to. And got the same degree, it would have been fine,
Isn't that right?
And
the thing is, you don't get to meet all the people, right?
Right, yeah. And it would have said Purdue on it, so it would have probably had a little bit more weight on it. So who knows? But
I love that.
Yeah. So you have a new album dropping here.
Yeah.
What's the release date?
So I don't have my official release date yet, and it sounds a little bit backwards to not have it, but I made a decision in November of this last year. I said, I'm putting the music first. I've always put the deadline first. But I'm putting the music first because I'm an independent artist and I have the gift of being able to do that.
Fair. Nice.
So I've gotten to know a lot of people on TikTok, and my TikTok has grown quite a bit. And as that happens, I feel like I'm connecting with these people, and we've just got a heart thing going on.
Yeah.
So as I take the temperature of where they're at and where I'm at, I just want to make it the best piece of art that I can make it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, though, like summertime.
Okay.
That would be so ideal.
Nice. Awesome. What is it about TikTok? Like, I've noticed a lot of musicians are really I don't want to say getting discovered on TikTok, because that just like undermines all the work they've put in before TikTok.
I appreciate you saying that.
Like they're just really connecting with TikTok. You know, like Lily Rose, I was introduced to her from TikTok. She was
she's killer.
Yeah, she's killing it right now, and so many other musicians.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what do you think it is about TikTok that just...
it kind of cuts out the middleman.
Yeah.
So there's nobody who's sitting there telling the artist what to do or not to do. It's just the artist being the artist.
Yeah.
And they're delivering themselves exactly, like, authentically.
Yeah.
So I think people appreciate that, and I think in our world where we've got AI and Photoshop and all this stuff that's fake, we have an outlet that allows us to actually have a window into something real. So that's what I've found with TikTok. I just get to really see into the minds of these people, what they think about, what they care about, where their hearts are. And I hope they feel the same way, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because in a world where it could easily be very fake with social media, I feel like that's where the most authentic representations of people are starting to really shine through.
Absolutely. And I think it's a choice to let the authenticity shine.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can paint it how you want to paint it, but if you choose that, it can be a really beautiful platform, you know?
Absolutely. So with this upcoming album coming out later this year, are you releasing singles off of that, or are you releasing singles in the meantime? Or
I do plan to release some singles. However, I really want it to be a body of work.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I know is a little against the grain, but I think that I was thinking about this the other day. There's so many artists who have become artists of longevity over the years, and part of their longevity is because there's a story attached to the songs and the music that they're putting out, and part of the story is a body of work. It's not just one song here or there. It allows you to get to know the person. So I'm going to be putting out a big old body of work, and I got to co-produce it with a guy named Mike Hicks, who is a big name here in Nashville. He's worked with lots of people, so it's a gift.
Yeah, for sure. Just to touch on something you mentioned before we start wrapping this up here, the idea of going against the grain and, you know, it being a bold choice to release a fuller body, a bigger body of music.
Yeah.
I think it's only a bold choice if you're not actively being a musician. If you're a musician and you're playing like once a month or once every other month or whatever it is, then the singles are your best friend because it keeps you relevant and you can release them quicker.
Right.
But if you're a musician that's out playing all the time, you're in Nashville and like even touring out into like Chicago or, you know, like whatever, I honestly, I really don't think it matters. Release a single, release a full body of work. You're in front of a new audience every night or whenever you perform. So
right, exactly. It's going to be so cool to see what the response is, and no matter the response too, I know that it's been on my heart to do this. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to record it. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. But I really appreciate your time here. It's been an absolute blast chatting with you.
I can't wait to come see you in Waco.
Whenever you're in town, I'm going to definitely try and swing out there. Waco's just one of them cities. It's an interesting place, and it's grown on me the last 4.5 years. So
I love it. I love Texas.
Awesome. But once again, thank you so much. If anybody wants to check out your music, where's the best place to do that?
Best way to do that is probably on my Instagram or my TikTok right now, but the new stuff will be coming soon.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.
Thank you.